So the first question, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well, I'm from Ireland. I'm from the north of Ireland. So in 1921, the country got divided by a gerrymandered border along religious lines. And that come to affect me dramatically in the fact that Catholics are second-class citizens, maybe even third-class citizens in that world. So 2/3 of the population were Protestant and identified as British and Unionist, Catholic haters. And so I didn't know that we were poor. I didn't know that we were discriminated against until you get up into your teenage years, really. You do know there's something very different. But the church was the entire center of our lives, probably more than any other part of Ireland, just because you went to school at church, you went to primary and secondary school belonged to the church. And I have 46 cousins and 18 aunts and uncles, and only one of those families lived in Dublin, which was another planet to us, even though it was only 75 miles down the main road. So church was enormous in every way, shape, or form. I was an altar boy. In my teenage years, I discerned that I ran the youth group in the local parish, and eventually decided I discerned I was called to be a priest. Met the Redemptorists, joined in 1980, just after Pope John Paul II's visit to Ireland, which was momentous. I had a great love of John Paul then, but I was young and naive and wouldn't have identified with him. But when he came to Ireland, it was like Jesus Christ had come off the cross. And with 1.5 million people nearly in Phoenix Park in Dublin, and the youth mass in Galway, I was 17, 18. It was just wow. So I joined the Redemptorist Order and was with them for 6 years. And in that time, I discovered that I was gay, or I didn't come out, but I certainly fell in love with somebody who didn't identify that way. So that was kind of very tough. He left after the first year, but as I journeyed along, I was coming towards 25 and I realized I can't be ordained. I don't know myself or anybody, and I also knew that the order knew that I was gay and that they were making decisions about where I would go or not go based on that, and I didn't like that. They didn't actually come out and say that, but I wanted to go to Brazil for my 2-year break. It's a 9-year formation system, so I had 2 years theology done, so 3 years philosophy, years novitiate, and 2 years in Dublin, and I just wanted to run. And so as it turned out, I had a friend in San Francisco who was here with his girlfriend, living without papers. And they said that Christmas, oh, get a visa and come on. And I had heard away in the back of my mind in like first year high school that San Francisco was the gay capital of the universe. And I had tucked that away for, there was no internet, there was no, you could find out too much about it all. So anyway, I got the visa, the student exchange visa, and came out August 22nd, no, June 22nd, 1986. And it was right in the heart of the AIDS pandemic. And the next thing, I found myself going to Holy Redeemer in the Castro, met people from Catholic Charities. Following year, opened the AIDS hospice with Catholic Charities and was the first manager of it. Turned out it was the first one in the world. And then shortly after that, I just came out, or around that time came out. And, it's a bit unusual to walk down Market Street with Catholic Charities of the Archdiocese of San Francisco, and a million homosexuals. When you think you're the only gay in the village in your little world. So it's a very powerful moment. And then a while after that, I met my partner of 11 years. And we moved in together and tried to have what I would call a little Catholic marriage. He's from Mexico. We're still good friends. And so we were together for 11 years. And then eventually, I was so much involved in church and I knew that's where my heart sung. So when that relationship ended, I decided to talk to Bishop John Cummins, and he accepted me with open arms. He asked me who this person was, who was the name of the lady who I'd lived with for 11 years. I said, oh, Bishop, he ain't no lady. I go, oh, don't talk about it. We don't need to talk about it. You're going to be celibate. And that was the end of that. I mean, there was no more discussion than that. And so I went to the seminary and was open about it to the faculty, but they advised silence. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I had a really good experience in the seminary and then was ordained for Oakland in Ireland. That was a very powerful experience. And I allude to that in the piece I did for outreach. So I have 46 cousins, 18 aunts and uncles. I'm one of 5. I'm the eldest of 5. And my father's name is Joseph. He's was a carpenter. My mother's name is Mary. So all I can say is here I am. Somebody had to be a priest in the family. So
how did you get to St. Columba?
Well, that's what I said in the beginning. It was my first, I had done a couple of assignments, a 3-year and a 1-year with other parishes. And then Bishop Vigneron at the time invited me to go to St. Columba. I'd never been to it before. But I think more than anything else, my experience of life, I realized I was meant to be here. There's a tremendous affiliation, connection between the Irish experience of colonialism and the put down of Catholicism in the empire, especially in Ireland, and then how that affected us growing up and who we were, and then compounding that with being gay. Also, by the time I got here, I was like, oh, this is where I'm meant to be. This, and it took a long time for them to communicate that I understand. I'm not Black, but I understand. And I can bring all of those experiences to the table and helping me enculturate and become part of the family at St. Columba. So probably was the best move of my life to accept that and to go there. So that's how I
Yeah,
ended.
so just for our viewers, Father Aidan, could you describe what St. Columba, the demographic is like there? What is
So back, it had been Irish, 1898, then, and the 1996 earthquake, it became a sort of Italian. St. Columba, the Irish saint. And then during the war, the African Americans came, and then by the 60s, with Vatican II, it became very much a Black Catholic church. And when I got here, it was probably about 70% Black. Very strong gospel presence, huge gospel choir, spirit of excellence. We had Ron Harbour as our music director, associate pastor, nationally renowned liturgist. Yeah, the parish is very much social justice oriented. We've got crosses in our garden for all the homicides in Oakland. And so it just was very much after my own heart and vice versa. I knew I was at home, but I had a lot to learn. It's very much it has a very big footprint in Oakland, both in terms of church and social justice.
So then what led you to coming out to your parishioners?
So I never really was in. I mean, if anybody knew me, they would know that I'd had a partner and that he was around as a friend. So all of the close people knew there was really nothing to hide. I never, when I would preach, I would talk about that relationship, but it was always gender neutral. You know, it was always, I was always afraid to, I don't know why, but I was always afraid, I suppose ultimately fear of rejection, because I wanted them to love me and I wanted to love them. But um, I think eventually it just, the George Floyd moment was very powerful in my experience of the diocese, and the bishop and I had a very difficult relationship as I publicly called him out on being a racist and not telling the truth. And that led to a very difficult relationship. But at that point, the parish was 101% behind me at that moment. And it reinforced that power and strength and connection. You know, I see myself more as a servant leader than leading the charge. So when the moment came when I was supposed to have this, a man, William Glenn, had written a book called I Came Seeking a Person, and a friend sent it to me and said, "You need to read this. It's your life." And he was supposed to come and preach for our Gay Pride month, June month. And then on the Saturday morning, he called, said, "I have COVID, I can't come." And then I thought to myself, you know, why am I? I need to say this like really explicitly. So that's how I ended up preaching that particular weekend of Gay Pride. And we've had a Gay Pride series for several months, especially before the pandemic. So the response was huge and muted all at the same time, because I think people are so used to the social justice inclusive thing, and most people sort of knew anyway. And there was just this general um, relief. And you know, afterwards, I've shared things before, and you feel raw inside, or you've said too much. There was no feeling like that after this. Lots of the gay folks that were there too, in the congregation, just cried. A lot of people were very emotional, and it just was a powerful affirmation. So that happened a year ago. So when I was trying to get James Martin, I had some connections and we talked, and he couldn't come. And then he said to me, "Could you do an article about your experience of coming out?" And I thought, yeah, okay. So that was about 4 or 5 months ago. So I wrote the article, and it was a massive response from it when it was published a few weeks ago. But for the people in the congregation, they were like, yeah, right. So what? Let's move on. You know, nothing really changed in the parish, you know, nothing. But my own internal sense of freedom became, I was a little less guarded about what I said about issues like that, because I didn't feel like I need to. An example of that is I did an Irish funeral, and a guy that died sort of tragically at 61, and it was all Irish people came, and it was a Friday night, and I was chatting with these ladies, and um, one of them had Google eyes at me. You know, I think she thought I was maybe somewhat attractive or something, and then she said, "Have you ever dated women?" I said, "No, just men." Before I was a priest, of course. And she said, "Oh, how silly of me." I said, "No, it's okay. There's no harm." But there was no pretense in it, you know, and nobody was hurt by it. So it's kind of fun.
So, the reaction has been pretty supportive in your parish. Now, we have viewers from across Canada in a variety of different parish settings, some more social justice oriented that would be very welcoming, and some not. What do you want just ordinary lay Catholics in the pews to learn or to know about your story?
Well, I think we're all so unique. God makes all of us so unique. We're all sinners. I don't know why when you think about it, why that particular issue of someone's humanity is more important than what it is culturally. And religiously and seen morally that way. But I mean, every person is so unique and wonderfully made in God's image and likeness. I'm like, this is just who we all are. And statistically, 10% of the population are gay. So everybody knows somebody, whether they know it or not. And they're there in the congregation all the time. Little kids are listening to what people are saying, how your relationships are going to play out. You just never know how you're going to influence people and call people to be authentically themselves. Is not what Christ calls us to be, authentically ourselves, made in God's image and likeness. I really believe that, and it's a powerful thing, and it's a gift. It's a real gift, and I think too, the experience of being othered and not seen and not heard gives, at least has always given me, tremendous compassion for people. Even my own, my father took his own life out of depression, and while I would never in a million years ask anybody to ever go through that sort of pain, but when I came to minister, my compassion and my ability to be with people is greater in those moments, when those situations, because you get it and you understand it and you feel it and you know it. So it's kind of the same when it comes to issues around human sexuality or relationships. I get it. Of course, I can't get everything, but I get it, and I think I'm a more compassionate person because of that, and a better minister of the gospel because I'm me.
Thank you so much for sharing that about your father's death. That must have touched you and obviously shaped your ministry, continues to shape your ministry.
Oh, incredibly, but I'm just illustrating that things happen. You never know what's going on in another person's life or story, or what their family background is, or what they've experienced, or what trauma, or what cycles they're trying to break. You just never know.
This obviously would apply to, Catholic clergy and religious themselves. They come from different backgrounds and experiences, and some I know have come out like yourself and are courageous in that and have inspired countless people. And others are in different stages of self-acceptance. Some don't come out because of privacy, or it's just
Right,
simple privacy, or because their religious communities pressure them not to.
right.
What do you want your, other clergy and religious to know about your coming out and your experience?
Well, I'm in a priest support group that I've been since my whole ministry, with a bunch of older men that have been in this group for nearly 40 something years. So my priest support group, now none of them have done this. Well, maybe one has. He asked me, he's in his mid-80s now, and he said, "You're going to preach at my funeral and tell it like it is." I'm like, "Oh my God, why me?" And he said, "Because you'll tell it like it is." Um, but they've all been very, they're like family to me. And so having this very normal support in a pre-support group has been very powerful to me. And then I think everybody has to find their own level, at the end of the day. When I think of all of the dots that are connected to brought me to that moment. I mean, I was 61 when I came out. It's kind of sad in a way, but I wouldn't have had the power or the strength or the sense of myself before then. So it was the right moment for me. But I think being authentically yourself is the most important thing. Uh, and there's a huge amount of people that are gay or bisexual in the church uh, and in ministry, and to me that's a good thing. But unfortunately, there are those who would identify that with the sex abuse scandal, and intellectually and scientifically and in every other way, that's been proven not to be the case. Sometimes the truth is bent, and no pun intended, in that direction. And but I think you have to be yourself, especially amongst people that love you and care for you. So I think everybody has to find their own level. And then you have those who are like, what thou dost protest too strongly, and they're all around us, and that's a little hard to deal with sometimes when you can really sense when your gaydar is operating on 100%, and you're looking at it going, what is that person so dead against this particular topic or person or issue? So it's complicated.
It is. So here we are, May 2024. We're in the middle of the synod on synodality. And in the beginning of the synod, we were all asked all around the world one primary question, and then, of course, many questions. But the primary question was, what are your hopes and fears along your journey of faith? You shared certainly lots of, life experiences, but what are some messages of hopes, or what are some realistic fears that you are experiencing on your journey of faith?
Well, I have those, when the Pope allowed the blessings for people in irregular situations, I blessed one straight couple and two gay couples. And it was really emotional. Before that, I always would bless rings for people and always find ways just to love people. I never presided at anything, but I know priests who have, but I never would sort of step over those lines. But I think I never thought the Pope would ever come out and make a statement like that. And it's so natural and it's so positive and so good. And I think ultimately there's a lot to be learned in our seminary system. It's so closed off. They have gone backwards into a monastic separation from the world and making little priests that are so caught up in a very conservative understanding of church, and it's not what the regular people, at least in the Bay Area, are like. It's very multicultural here in the Bay Area. It's very dynamic. There's everybody, and like James Joyce says, here comes everybody. That's quite literally true in the Bay Area. And so you're in this bubble, I suppose. And I would love the bubble to be the same everywhere, but it's not. So it drives a lot of people underground, and sometimes that leads to behaviors and other things that are not conducive to ministry or to church. So I'm hoping and praying that Francis will take things to the next steps along the way. And it's not even Francis, because it's the Holy Spirit. I mean, that's really, it's like Vatican II. There were 2,150 bishops, and 2,100 of them voted in front. And you wonder why people say, all these conservatives said the thing, and they have to be loved too, but it's like the Holy Spirit was screaming very loudly what we needed to do, and we still need to play that out, I think, what that means. And the Synod is part of all of that. So let's hope and pray that people have been doing a lot of praying and a lot of discussion with all of the people of God, and then they come back and take the next steps. I'm excited. I look forward to what's going to happen.
Wonderful. I think that's a great way to end. Thank you so much for your time, for your courage, and for coming out, and for inspiring so many people, including myself, which is why I reached out to you. And thank you so much for your vulnerability and sharing your story. I'm sure this will touch so many people.
Absolutely. I hope you understand the Irish accent well enough.